Hi, ArcfieldWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Monday morning, August the 18th. Hurricane Erin is a Category 4 hurricane this morning with maximum sustained winds of around 140 miles per hour. It did indeed undergo some rapid intensification between, let's say, early Friday and late Saturday, jumping all the way from tropical storm status to Category 5 major hurricane status by the time Sunday became late in the day or early at night. Rapid intensification generally tends to occur when that Madden-Julian oscillation is in phases 2 or 3, and indeed that where it has been over the past several days, and contributing to very strong upward motion over the Atlantic basin. It was kind of capped in its intensification for a while late last week as it was moving through some dry air that moved to the west of from the Sahara Desert region of Africa into the tropical Atlantic. Once it escaped that dry air Friday into the Saturday time frame, it just exploded, and again rapidly intensifying all the way from strong tropical storm status to major Hurricane 5 status here over the past weekend here. Again, it is a Category 4 system right now. Could strengthen a little bit more today. It has quite a ways to go if it were to try to recapture that Category 5 status. I believe the threshold for winds 157 for maximum sustained winds or above. Again, it's at 130 right now. Nonetheless, it could strengthen a little bit today as it starts that curve. We talked about this curve coming, keeping it well offshore of the eastern seaboard, and then by later in the week it weakens back down to either Category 1 or Category 2 status by midweek, and then starts to race off to the north and east into the open waters of the North Atlantic. It had been a relatively small storm system, but typically as these systems move farther and farther north, and even when they weaken, they can kind of broaden in nature. So yes, it will tend to weaken by the middle of the week, but it'll also tend to broaden out, become a little bit larger of a storm. Bottom line, the Outer Banks certainly can get some tropical storm winds, maybe even some hurricane gusts as this system passes by well to the east, but at the same time tends to broaden out a little bit. Certainly, there can be rip currents, rough surf, high waves all along the eastern seaboard over the next several days, even some coastal flooding as a result of this hurricane being quite strong. Even though it's well offshore, it will have an impact on coastal sections of the eastern U.S. Now, one other thing I'd like to point out, there is another system on its heels right here in the far eastern Atlantic. This is the position right now of major Hurricane Erin, again about to really begin that curve off to the northwest, then the north, and then ultimately to the northeast. And as systems move to higher and higher latitudes, they tend to accelerate. Indeed, that is what will happen with Erin later this week. But again, on its heels, another system now currently located in the far eastern Atlantic has a very good chance of becoming the next named tropical storm. We'll just have to watch it as it treks generally to the west-northwest over the next several days, may become a player sometime later next week across the eastern or southern part of the U.S., something we'll have to track, of course, over the next several days. Now, we've talked about that ACE index, the accumulated cyclone energy, and with Erin having been a rather long-lived storm system up till now, and it has several days to go, and a strong, of course, a very strong system reaching Category 5 status, that suddenly flipped the ACE from below normal to above normal in the Atlantic. Here is the latest table as compiled by Colorado State University, now above normal for the ACE in the Atlantic basin, and certainly this will climb over the next few days with the continuation of Erin, and again could be a fifth named tropical storm coming up here over the next several days, now located over the eastern Atlantic Ocean. Actually, that would actually become the sixth named tropical system. Meanwhile, the Pacific Ocean here split into two: the Eastern Pacific, Western Pacific, still below normal, and well below normal across that all-important western part of the Pacific Ocean. They tend to average several super typhoons, as they call it out in that part of the world, in a given year, maybe 7 or 8 super typhoons, and haven't had one so far in the western Pacific Ocean, so very unusually quiet there, and the Pacific Ocean is leading the way for below normal conditions across the northern hemisphere as a whole. But now the Atlantic Basin has flipped into above normal territory. Well, let's take a look at the 500 millibar height anomaly pattern here. This is beginning the day here on Monday, August the 18th. Here is a reflection of Erin at the 500 millibar level. And remember, I've often talked about, I'd like to look at the southeastern part of Canada and see if there is a strong upper level ridge that tends to favor tropical systems undercutting that ridge towards the southeastern part of the U.S. from the east to the west. And you can see we begin the day here with some sign of an upper level ridge kind of poking into the northeastern part of the U.S., but it is not your classic setup, fortunately, for systems to travel all the way west into the U.S. East Coast here. It does, again, tend to kind of poke in for the next 24 hours or so. And that is the reason why this system continues at this particular time to go to the west or northwest here. But by the time we get to the middle of the week, and this is the Wednesday morning forecast map, that ridge tends to weaken and kind of retrograde back to the west. No strong upper level ridge right in this area at the middle part of this week. This is the Wednesday morning forecast map. As a result, this system will not continue in this fashion here. Again, if you have that strong upper level ridge right here, this could be a different story. Fortunately, we do not have that, and we go a little bit farther out in time when you see this then starts to curve to the north and then to the northeast. And as is typical with tropical systems, when they get to the higher latitudes, they tend to accelerate. And this is going to accelerate later this week, especially Thursday, Friday time frame. It's going to start to race off to the north and east as it gets kind of absorbed by this trough of low pressure over the northwestern part of the Atlantic Ocean. This is now going into Friday morning here and starting to get captured by that upper level trough, racing off to the North Atlantic. Now, I just want to kind of quickly go through the upcoming weekend. Very strong upper level trough for this time of year, centered over Hudson Bay region of Canada later in the upcoming weekend, and we'll go into the early part of next week. Now, this is a week out from right now, and we'll see here that upper level trough kind of dominating the scene across the southeastern part of Canada, the eastern Great Lakes. So that next tropical system that we saw that is currently in the far eastern Atlantic Ocean, reflected right here. It's just way too early to get any kind of definitive forecast for that. But again, not your classic situation here with a strong upper level ridge over the southeastern part of Canada. Nonetheless, this has a chance of making its way to, let's say, the Bahamas or Florida or the Gulf area. This is, again, a week to maybe 10 days out from right now. We'll be looking at this for sure as a possible impact somewhere in the Atlantic Basin here late this weekend, early to middle part of next week. And again, this is the forecast map for the middle part of next week. But again, missing out on that strong upper level ridge over the southeastern part of Canada. Well, here's the current set of surface forecast maps from the 0Z run of the GFS. First of all, very, very strong upper level, surface level, high pressure system over southeastern part of Canada, bringing refreshingly cool air into the northeast U.S., into the mid-Atlantic region, following what was a hot and humid weekend. High temperatures yesterday for the most part in the big cities, low to middle 90s. Big difference this morning with that stiff east to northeast flow of air around that high pressure over the southeastern part of Canada. Here is the position as of this morning of Hurricane Erin. Again, Category 4 hurricane right now, and it stays quite cool for the next 48 hours in the northeastern states. And then this system, notice the GFS, by the way, tends to strengthen it's a 959 millibar low by tomorrow morning, and then it tends to strengthen considerably, actually, with that central pressure falling all the way down to a 932 millibar hurricane by the time we get to late in the day on Wednesday. And again, as I mentioned earlier, the system will tend to broad out, become a larger system, and certainly have an impact on the Outer Banks. Even though it's not going to be a direct hit, it will certainly have some kind of a hit on the Outer Banks as it broadens out over the next few days and becomes a larger storm. And it's at this point that it starts to get captured by that upper level trough over the northwestern part of the Atlantic Ocean, begins that acceleration off to the North Andes. And again, I mentioned this earlier, there can be rip currents, high surf, very tall waves up and down the eastern seaboard, maybe some coastal flooding, beach erosion as well, certainly during that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday time frame as this system passes off, even though it's well offshore, and since it's going to hang around for a few days, it will have time to increase the waves across the middle Atlantic region. You can see even here on this Thursday morning forecast map, northeast flow of air, that onshore flow of air can produce some beach erosion, coastal flooding, and again, high waves up and down the eastern seaboard for the next several days, it appears. Then we go into the latter part of the week, and that system starts to weaken, but it starts to accelerate off to the north and east. Very, very nice weather, by the way, in that, let's say, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday time frame in the northeastern part of the nation. Again, even though it could be rough surf in the ocean, the atmosphere will be quite nice indeed, quite calm, with very comfortable temperatures really through the week across the northeastern part of the nation. We'll go into the latter part of the upcoming weekend. We'll just to see. Here we go. This is a reflection of that next potential tropical storm. Again, it will become the 6th named tropical storm of the season. This is all the way now into the latter part of the upcoming weekend. At the same time, we have another cool air mass all across this part of Canada, northern U.S., and this could play a role in the ultimate path of this system. Again, some nice cool air masses on the map here showing up today, sharply cooler in the northeastern states, and this bodes well for temperatures next week. And this week, for pretty much the entire week, we'll have comfortable temperatures across the northeastern states. So still an active tropical scene, Hurricane Erin, Category 4 this morning. We'll start that curve first to the northwest, then to the north, and ultimately to the north and east, and end up out over the far North Atlantic by the end of the week. That's it for now. For Arcfield Weather.com, this is your meteorologist, Paul Dorian.